board meeting should be a place where we come together as the leadership of the church and say, where are we going? Are we aligned? Are we tracking here? Yes, we're going to have to deal with administrative, the mundane.
Right.
But the majority of the time together should be about how we're leading this church forward.
Welcome to another episode of Leadership 360 podcast. We're so excited to have another great guest. Elton, we did not...
We're matching.
I'm going to say, we did not call each other this morning and say, what are you going to wear? As you've noticed with all of the podcast episodes, I wear the same thing. So I think you might want to be like me. I don't know.
Great minds think alike, right?
That's exactly right.
For those of you just listening, we have this very bright blue shirt.
That's right.
Cobalt blue.
That's right. One of our many Texas Conference shirts we have in our closets. So I'm excited to have Elton DeMoraes, who is our conference president, but I consider... even more than my president, a friend, a colleague, someone I've known for the entire time that I've been in Texas.
How many
13 years this summer.
Really?
So you were ministerial when I came on board.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing to see how your trajectory has continued to grow. And we'll talk about that in a second, but also just how much Texas has changed in those 13 years that I've been here. It's almost a different place.
Yeah. Every time I see pictures on Facebook of the memories, said, "Oh, he's not here. He's not here anymore. He's not here anymore." So
that's true.
It's changed way too fast.
Yeah, but Texas is such a great place. We absolutely love it here. We've had some chances to go other places, and it's like no. I love my team in Texas.
I wasn't born here.
That's right,
but I got here as quick as I could.
That's exactly right. So talk to. Some folk may know you from some of your other roles, but how in the world did you become conference president? Is it something that you're like, man, one day I'm going to be conference president of the Texas
Not in a million years. Not in a million years. Well, Tom, thank you again for allowing me to have this conversation with you. Love your podcast. I love this opportunity to connect with everyone out there, right? Yes. Through YouTube or through whatever they receive their podcast. Came to the U.S. 1998. And my desire was just be a church pastor. To work. And so not even a million years I thought that I was even remotely going to be a departmental director.
Right.
Then, after many years working as a pastor, 2010, I become a, stewardship and church planting director. 6 months later, I went on vacation. 6 months later, came back, and I was ministerial church planting and an evangelism director.
That'll teach you to go on vacation.
Don't do that.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So then worked for many years in those three departments and doing all the pastoral transitions on the English side. And I loved my job, loved being ministerial. Yeah. And then the need came, and then I became conference secretary. It was a challenging job. It was a challenging position to, look at, policy compliance and personnel and whatnot. And then I received a call in 2018 to go to the union, vice president. And, in my mind, I thought, okay, this is it. I'm going to stay here now for the remainder of my career. You look at all those that have gone to the union, and that's what happened to them. Mm-hmm. But in 2021, the Lord decided to call us back to Texas. And so that's when the executive committee voted us to become president. So, Tom, if you look at my trajectory, not in a million years, right. Because I always wanted just to pastor, just want to serve. So I see this as just an opportunity to serve. Yeah. I'm a steward of this position for now. I'm a steward. I don't see myself as the president. This is as a big shot or big. No, I'm a steward of the position. I'm here to serve. And we have a great team together. We have a great conference, great church members and pastors and teachers and schools. And so it's a privilege to serve. And I'm excited. And when the Lord says, your time is up, my time is up.
Well, we're excited to see, hopefully for a long time, you to be being in the chair, because I'll say, working alongside of you, wow. Having an administration, your VPs, the officers, mm-hmm. there's never any question that you have the best interest of our churches in mind all the time. And I love the culture of this, and we've talked about it on other episodes, is that we as a conference are here to serve our churches. If it weren't for the churches...
That's it. You're not going to find a baptistry in this building.
Exactly.
Because ministry happens in the local church. We're here to support. So if we're not supporting, then what is our role?
Right.
And so, and I loved every phase of my work here in Texas. I loved every president that I worked under. I loved every departmental director. But maybe I'm biased because now this is our time here. But I believe we have the greatest team, in ever here in this office. Yeah. And we have a great culture. We're not perfect.
Sure.
But we're family.
Yeah.
And we work together, and we work together well.
And it's a great place to just come to work because you know that we are doing something for the 68,000 members of the Texas Conference. Yeah. But more importantly, we're doing ministry to reach the 25 million or so people that are a part of the field of the Texas Conference.
Yes.
And while that's daunting, while that is humbling, it's also exciting.
It's very exciting.
Because we're seeing God work in so many different ways.
And we see our members engaging. We see our pastors excited. We see our teachers, giving, sacrificing, right? So it is all of us working together. We're not perfect. No, we're not perfect. There are many areas that we can improve.
Sure.
But I see here great momentum happening. And I'm excited about the future because our people are engaged and connecting, and they want to expand God's kingdom.
Yeah. Well, one of the things to kind of transition to the reason I brought you on here is having spent time as a local church pastor, departmental director, executive, that you've sat in a lot of meetings.
I say that if I would receive money for every meeting that we attend, right? we would be millionaires.
You don't on an island in the Caribbean somewhere.
For sure.
So one of the things I want to talk about, earlier in the season, we talked with Elder Montoya, who is our current executive secretary, and we talked about what the meetings are, what are the boards and committees that we have here at the conference level and what their role is. But I want us to dig down a little bit more to, okay, in a local church, we have certain committees and boards. We have the church board and church and business are really the two big ones that pretty much obviously every church has on one level or another. What are the function of these two boards? What is a church board's function, but also what is the church and business? Why do we do something like that?
Well, we work by representation, right?
Okay.
That's how our church operates. So in the conference level, constituency session, right, is when the members, they come to elect the new officers, to look at the bylaws of the conference, and that's the representation that comes from the churches. The church and business meeting is a small version of a constituency session.
I like that.
So the church and business meeting is the highest authority in the church. Is when we come together. And by the way, I see a lot of times that business meetings are not well attended.
Right.
People are not interested. But guess what? If your voice is not heard, if you're not there to be a part of the process, you cannot complain about the decisions that the body is making, because that's how we work. We work by representation, and the members, they have an opportunity to speak. So, and then, of course, the church board, where we come together as leaders of the church that have been selected by the body to lead the church for a year or 2 years. So those two meetings are vital. I hear churches sometimes, and we want to make this very practical, right? And this is not a criticism on anyone. I don't want this to become an indictment to your pastor, to your leader, but I believe that when we only have business meetings once a year, I think that is tragic, because we are not making sure that the body is involved in at least being informed where the church is going. We only use business meetings sometimes for if we're building or if there's a discipline. But I believe that if we do quarterly business meetings and we're sharing about the vision of the church, we are reaffirming about the mission of the church, we're reaffirming our strategies, our goals, where we're going, you're going to have a much better buy-in. And you're going to have input, allow input. Right. Guys, what do you think? Are we in a good direction or not? The same thing with board meetings. Board meetings are vital for us, not to just talking about where we're going to buy toilet paper from, Costco or Sam's, or where should we have electricity with this company or the other company. That's what people hate about board meetings. Board meetings should be a place where we come together as the leadership of the church and say, where are we going? Are we aligned? Are we tracking here? Yes, we're going to have to deal with administrivia, the mundane.
Right.
But the majority of the time together should be about how we're leading this church forward, how we conquering, and how we're expanding God's kingdom. When we do this, boy.
I think if you do that, you will have greater participation because people can get excited about, man, this is what we could do in the community. This is, this is the difference we're going to make. But if I'm going to a meeting every month where there's contention, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but all we're talking about is the administration of, okay, do we want a trifold or a bifold bulletin? Do we want to paint it on, stock, or people are busy. And here's something that we continue to have to remind ourselves of. And it's something that I know when you chair executive committee here at the conference, when Elder Montoya does personnel committee, Elder Terry does, finance, always cognizant of there's some of us that work for the church. We're paid, but the church at its base in the local community is all volunteer.
They are.
And we live in a very busy society, and we've got to be cognizant of as the pastors and the leaders that the people are volunteers.
And time is valuable.
Exactly. Let's make use of their time and their expertise. I'm convinced that God brings to the church those expertise that the church needs at the time. We've got people from all walks of life, and don't want to waste their time, but also tap into, okay, I'm not the expert in X, Y, or Z.
Exactly.
Brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so, you're an expert because that's your field. Help us understand how to navigate that
and do things better.
Right.
Peter Drucker says that it is impossible to fire a volunteer. Why? They quit way before you fire them. Because when people, they see that, this is not worth of my time. I work, 45, 50, 60 hours in the corporate world. I volunteer in other places, but I need to have time with my family. If I come to this meeting and it's not productive, guess what? I'm not going to serve.
Yeah.
And so I think those are the things that we have to pay attention when we're talking about these two important meetings, our board meetings and our business meetings.
So, again, probably one of the most dysfunctional places in the church are specifically our church board meetings. Business meetings can get kind of ugly too. And it comes to a point where people don't like to attend them for two reasons. One is they're not doing anything of substance. It's just kind of, but two, it can get pretty contentious. Why do you think our board meetings and our business meetings can get so contentious? So much so that I've heard pastors say, man, I hate attending board meeting. I'm there because I have to be. But why the contention?
I don't want to generalize, right? But from my experience, from what I have seen, number one is not organized. When you don't have a set agenda, when you don't have a set time, when you don't process through your agenda or the issues through different levels, when we come unprepared, then yes, we are going to have issues because, again, you're sitting there and you look at, well, there's no agenda, or the agenda is not well defined, or the agenda has not been well vetted. You're going to become a little more agitated. You're going to be a little more upset. And so, because you feel like I am wasting my time.
Right.
So not being organized is one issue. Number two is not following proper protocol. I have never seen a church, and again, I reserve the right to be wrong, but I have never seen a church having conflicts or issues by following the church manual. It's always the other way around. When we don't want to follow that set of guidelines, then we're in trouble. Because I see people all the time saying, well, those are just suggestions. All right, so Tom, let's say that you don't want to follow the church manual. So now we're going to follow your ideas.
Right.
But Sister Mary here, she does not agree with your ideas. Brother John thinks his ideas are better. So what happens now? We have conflict.
Yep.
Now, if we say, Sister Mary, thank you for your idea, Brother John, but let's see what the church manual says. Oh, the church manual says this. That's where we're going, because now we can agree on a set of document that's the direction that we're going. And we cannot be a buffet church board, picking and choose what we want from the church manual. Either we go and use that as our document or not. And when you don't, that's when then you have conflict. That's where you spend so much time with the things that don't matter.
Right.
You know, I don't want to say the name of the church, but right, because they're probably
long,
listening.
far away from here.
But you know, I became a pastor there, and then it was midnight, and we're still there on the board in the board meeting, my first board meeting.
Wow.
Why? Oh, well, we don't follow the church manual. From 7 p.m. to midnight, you're still on, and you're still discussing if Costco is better than Sam's, or if we're, so I became a pastor there, and we start putting some guidelines in place. We brought the church manual back, and now board meetings are no more than 2 hours. And I said, what happened? I said, well, because now we are having a set guideline. So organized, making sure that we're having the church manual as our guide. Number 3, I think when we're not vetting our agendas, right? When, for example, my board meetings have always been on the third Tuesday of the month. Mm-hmm. So every first Tuesday, I had my finance committee. So we look at everything. The second Tuesday, we had our elders meeting. So now we're looking at the finance proposals. We're looking at the agenda for the board meeting. And now the elders, together, we set the agenda for the board meeting. And say, guys, what do you think about this? Oh, I don't think we're ready for pastor for them. Great, let's move here. Let's put it here. And so when we bring the agenda together, that agenda has been seen by the finance, has been seen by the elders. Now we have a much better buy-in because now we have vetted and we have brought more people into participation. And then we need to leave feelings away.
Good luck with that.
Right? Because if I say, Tom, if you come to me and say, Elton, I think this idea here that you're proposing, I'm not sure if this is a good way to go. Well, it's even biblical. There's safety in the multitude of counselors. I don't know everything.
Right. So
I need other eyes. I need other voices that can help me making sure that we are going in the right direction. And you know what? 99.9% of the time, when I listen to others, that decision was a much better decision. Every time, 100% of the time, when I stop listening to others and I go just with what I want, it turns out to be a bad decision. So, but then we bring feelings. Oh, he hurt my feelings. Right. That was my idea. No, you know what? In board meetings, there are no friendships. There's respect. There is listening. We're listening. We're respecting each other. But when we come together, hey, we agree to disagree, and then the body will vote. And when the body votes, we come out of this meeting together.
Right. One of the things I learned very quickly is that idea of even if you're on the losing side of an argument, once you leave board, it is our decision.
Yes.
And much of the conflict post-board meeting happens when it becomes, well, it was their decision. I voted against this, and I think it's a dumb idea, and that's where.
And we shoot ourselves in the foot. because now we're going to the informal board meeting
Right.
in the parking lot. And now we're saying, yeah, did you see what Susie did? Did you see what Mary? Oh, it was not my decision, but they voted, but I'm against it. But so what are we doing? We're now dividing now the camp.
Right.
And so we got to learn how to be able to process this, leave feelings away, and trust that God is in control. If it was not a good decision, God will bring us to the best decision.
Right.
But when we're trying to do this and we start calling people and we're trying to lobby and we bring politics into the church, God is not going to bless.
Yeah.
And that's why we have all this conflict going on, because we did not know how to be a good board member.
Right. So one of the things the church manual points out very clearly is the primary function of the church board is to plan for evangelism. How are we reaching our community?
Yeah.
But again, having been in ministry as long as I have, as long as you have, we recognize that many of our boards, that's a small portion of it.
And
usually
towards
at
the end.
I was going to say, usually
Right?
it's at the end after we deal with all the important stuff.
Yeah.
What would it look like? And I want to go to the positive. What would it look like if we did focus on reaching our community and let the administrative stuff just, okay, maybe we empower people to do it, let our deacon pick, do they have a membership to Sam? What would a board look like if they did focus on evangelism primarily and dealt with the other stuff other ways, or very succinctly?
Well, now you are talking about things that are exciting. But before you get to that board meeting, so let's say, for example, you have a finance committee, right? You have sub-boards. The finance committee, at that level, they can probably say, hey, guys, you know what? What is best for us? It's best for us to have a Sam's Club or a Costco. We're not making promo here too. Or, are we saving money doing this or not? So at that little subcommittee, they're making those decisions and making those recommendations. We have people say, hey, you know what, maybe this, we're going to reallocate this budget to do this. So they're making those decisions there. Folks that understand finances.
Right.
Making the decision too. So when we come to the board meeting, that recommendation from people that are in that area, hey, you know what? Yeah, that's good. So you take only maybe a minute or so, just say that's the recommendation. So when we come to board meetings, I hope that we already did our homework on all the other stuff, so that now we can talk about folks. Now, there's an idea here from Brother John to start a soup kitchen here in the church. What are the things that we need to do here to start a soup kitchen? Oh, Pastor, I already did my research. This is the things that we're trying to do. Well, exciting. All right. Well, maybe we're not ready to make a decision today. Let's create a subcommittee that can look into this a little more. But at least we're looking at the idea, we're looking at the mission and the vision, that if this is going to be good for the church or not. When we do those things, now people are seeing the church from a different angle.
Right.
And they're coming there not to decide on stuff that really, most people don't care. But they're deciding on the community, the outreach, the in-reach, and how can we really use our finances and be good stewards in expanding God's kingdom.
So just to kind of conclude, because I want to talk about another committee that we have at the church that causes a lot of angst. But so organization, having a vetted agenda, having an agenda,
set time,
and we're going to do this in this way. Follow the church manual, follow the protocol, but also focus on the important things, and let other committees. Focus on those things that they're experts in, they understand.
Empower them.
Yes.
Empower. Just release control. Release control. And you know what? Most of the decisions that we're going to make in the church, they are not life or death decisions.
Right.
So, hey, we made a decision here. We bought this that we could have saved $50 and we spend a little more. All right, next month we'll do something different.
Right.
Right? But when we're prepared, we have a set agenda, we're organized, vetted, we have meetings with our elders, our finance committee. We know that every third Tuesday of the month, and we know that we're going to do this for 2 hours.
Right.
Anything beyond 2 hours, folks, let's table. We'll pick up next month, or we call an emergency meeting.
Right.
But anything beyond that is not productive.
And you also recommended earlier, going back to business meeting, having business meetings more than once a year, having them once a quarter where it's not so much, okay, we're doing the business. It's, hey, this is what's exciting that's going on in the church.
Yeah, this is, and it's a way for us to do a performance track. Say, folks, think about this, folks. Last month we were able to reach this many people in the community. You know what? Let's put our goal. Let's see if we can do this. In this next 3 months, and we bring the report next, the next business meeting. Make it something fun. Buy some pizza. Have some haystack that you can gather. Have a meal towards the end. When we do those things, right, we are engaging our members in a different setting,
right,
and we're having conversations. We're floating ideas, and those things can only add to the fabric of the church and to connecting people.
So we talked about business meeting. Mm-hmm. Talked about church board.
So my recommendation, business meeting once a quarter.
Okay.
If it's too much for your church, maybe twice a year. And church board every month.
Every month.
Making sure to have your finance committee. Make sure you have elders meetings every month. Those things will make sure that you have a very a successful board meeting. Okay.
So let's talk about the other committee, the big committee.
The big one.
That I know a lot of pastors, if
PTSD and a lot of people.
It really does. It really does. And that's nominating committee. What are some of the best practice to make nominating committee effective, but also something that people want to participate in? Because I've been in church where people want to be on nominating committee so they have a say, but then most of the other people are like, they've run far away from nominating committee because they've been there, they've done it. And church board can be contentious, church and business can be contentious, but nominating committee can be what I call a full contact sport.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that a nominating committee can be effective to do what it needs to do? And maybe, you can define for us exactly what the role is, but also something that people go, man, I would really love to serve on nominating committee.
Yeah. So the church manual, again, has a very description and step-by-step point on how to get there. It's very simple. Now, this may not work for our university church or our largest churches. They have ways of working positions differently.
Right.
So I'm not
very true.
I'm not talking about those churches because they are maybe 5% or even less in a conference.
Right.
Right? They're just a few there. I'm talking about the 95%. The 95% is where they get stuck. And that's when we have conflicts, we have a lot of misunderstanding, we have a lot of hurt. People hurt because of nominating committee. You can always track somebody that was hurt by nominating committee, right? So, man, time is almost, right? Wow. Here's the problem. Follow the church manual, number one. Number two, don't try to do this in June. In my churches, we always start working a nominating committee in March.
March. Okay.
So March, we bring it to the church and say, folks, now some churches, they vote to have nominating committee every year.
Right.
Some churches vote to have this every 2 years. This is not a decision from the pastor. This is not a decision by the board. This is a decision by the church and business. Church and business decides if we're going to do this every year or every 2 years. My recommendation, every 2 years.
Right.
So then you follow the process. Don't short circuit the process. People say, we don't understand why you have to select an organizing committee to select the nominating committee.
Right.
right? There's a science behind that. So you follow the process. Don't short circuit the process. Have the organizing committee, either by verbal or by ballot. Once you selected them on the church on Sabbath morning, already meet with them afterwards to select the nominating committee. Have the nominating committee selected, read those, twice, first reading, second reading. They start working. And when they start working in my nominating committees, a good best practice here is that I tell my people, everyone is eligible. Everyone that is a member of this church is eligible. Now, the church manual says that in order for you to serve as a leader, you have a higher now standard. Now you have to be a returning your tithe. You need to set the example. So people say, well, what about if Brother John is not returning his tithe? Well, that's not for you to know.
Right.
So everyone is eligible. So we work the first night. The pastor is the chairman of the board, the nominating committee. We work together the first night. Let's say we selected 12 names there. Then I sit down with the treasurer and I say, my sister, or my brother, I need to see how many of those here have any issues with returning tithe. She'll tell me, well, Pastor, out of the 12, maybe 5 here may have issues. All right? I'll go sit down with those 5 and visit with them because tithing is not a financial issue. It's a spiritual issue.
Right.
And I sit down with them and say, brother, listen, you've been selected by this position. But I've seen here there's an issue with returning tithe. And sometimes they say, Pastor, yes, I've been unemployed. I'll say no more. Or Pastor, we just moved. I was sending my tithe to another church, but as soon as my membership comes in, I'm going to send it here. But a lot of people say, yeah, Pastor, that's my problem. I've not been a returning tithe. I say, my friend, you have 2 options here. You've been selected. We want you to participate. Why don't you bring God to, what the Malachi says, right? Prove me, test me.
Yeah.
And if you start returning your tithe, then we're good. You can be a leader. What do you think? Pastor, I want to do it. Perfect. You go back and say, everyone has been vetted. We're all good. If he says, no, Pastor, I don't want it, then I tell him, would you please decline? And if he declines, I go back to my people, say, hey, folks, all those 11, they decided to serve, but Brother John declined. He doesn't want to serve at this point. I don't have to say why. The reason, because that is a very personal issue. Right. We don't want this, even in the nominating committee, somebody will leak this to somebody. Right. And that somebody will trust somebody that will leak to somebody. And all of a sudden, everybody knows that Brother Jim does not return tithe. And that's when it becomes the hurt. That's when they start not trusting each other.
So you hit on a point that I think causes a lot of angst is leaking.
Leaking, yeah.
Is that you talk about in the nominating committee, you talk about people.
Mm-hmm.
And on the one hand, you want people to be open and forthright and not, hey, I think this person or this person. But on the other hand, you've got to feel safe to be able to do that, knowing that if you say this, it's not going to end up on the WhatsApp group, later, or it's, the Adventist grapevine. Mm-hmm. So I think too, it's understanding that confidentiality. Yeah. And
it's so vital. And because again, everything that we're doing here, either we are agents of God or agents of Satan. There's no other way to say it. So if we're doing something that is dividing the church, you're not an agent of God. Plain and simple. Right. So that's why when we're talking about the nominating committees, I tell my people, so listen, we're talking about here the fitness of the person, the knowledge or the fitness for service. So Sister Susie, can she serve as head deaconess? Yeah, she served it very well before, and I believe she's has done a great job. Or, well, unfortunately not. Maybe that was not her area. That was not her gift. And that's perfectly fine. Then maybe she can serve in another area, right? So those are the conversations you have, but not like, oh, I don't like Susie. Well, that's not what we're doing here. We're looking at the position as far as if the person can fulfill that role or not. So, and then what we do is another thing that people hate about nominating committee is the calling. Who's going to call John to see if he accepts the position?
That's so true.
Right? I tell people, we remove that. Nobody calls anybody. What we do is I craft a letter. And so I need to have a secretary because it takes a little more work. So let's say we decided for 12 positions, right? So elders, deacons, Sabbath school, AY director. I craft a letter saying, Brother John, you've been selected as an elder of this church where the nominating committee worked and they believe you can serve well in this area. Attached, you're going to find a job description. You're going to find the role, what is expected of you, the meetings that we meet every month, and what is the departments that your eldership is going to be under. And you don't have, if you accept this position, you don't have to do anything. If you don't accept this position, you need to call me.
Okay.
Because now I have, as a pastor, I want to talk to Brother John and say, Brother John, we need you in this position. Right. So it's a conversation with the pastor, not with somebody else in the committee. So now John is going to take that letter and he's going to say, okay, should I accept this or not? He has the job description, has what the role entails, has all the meetings that are going to be in the meeting, that he's going to be required of him, and the departments that he's going to have to coach. Now he's going to have a much better way to decide if he wants or not. And I'm telling you, in all my churches, our nominating committee, we were able to finish in no more than 3 meetings.
Wow.
Because what I want to do is I want to make sure everybody's elected. So then by May, I'm already training my people. So then when July comes, they're ready to serve.
Running.
Yeah.
Man, we've covered a lot of territory. We could spend hours because again, one of the places where there's again a lot of dysfunction is in our meetings, and they can be places where God can do amazing things through the body, whether it be the church and business, the board, the nominating committee. But many times we get wrapped around the spokes and they become places, as you said earlier, places where people get hurt and end up leaving the church because of broken relationships, because of all the other things. So we could spend hours talking about it, but I want to kind of conclude this part with one takeaway. If people ignore everything else or don't remember anything else we've talked about, what's the big idea you want people to remember about these various meetings and boards that the church has?
There is no way that you can have a strong board meeting or strong business meeting without organization. You got to be organized. To me, that's the main thing. When you're organized, you have done your homework, you have prepared, you're ready to go. Guess what? You're going to have a good business meeting. You're going to have good board meetings. You're going to have a well-oiled machine. So you got to be organized. You got to be prepared. Can I take another one more? One
sure,
more? Maybe
absolutely. No, second. Well,
and we gotta do this. We gotta learn to remove the feelings away. As a pastor, I don't know everything.
Right.
I don't know everything. My elders don't know everything. So I don't want to spend time trying to master something that I'm not good at it. I'm gonna master things that I am good at it.
Right.
So if my elder here is better in finances, guess what? I'm gonna lean on him because he has a better gift than I have. Now, do I understand the finances? Of course I do. Sure. But he has a stronger gift in that area. So just remove the feelings away and make sure that we're all this together for the good of the body.
Elton, thank you for that. We could do part 2, 3, 4, 5 because there. Again, we both have been in ministry long enough and been around churches long enough that many times the conflict that a church has is going to really start at the nominating committee, church business meeting. And I think if we can get to a point where our churches have best practices, organized, vetted, just it can be places where God can work through people, and they're exciting for people to
be a part of.
Not say, "Oh man, I got to go to board meeting too," but I get to go to board meeting,
and I get to contribute. I get to
God is using me in this particular spot. Yeah. All right, I want to do the lightning round with you.
All right.
So I'm going to say, ask a question and quick response. Number 1, beach or mountains?
Oh, beach.
What's your favorite beach?
Punta Cana.
Is that...
No, in DR, the Dominican Republic.
Dominican. Oh, okay, I've not. All right, I was going to say. I thought you were going
all my
Brazil.
DR brothers and sisters, and Brazil has, but every time when I think about beaches, I'm thinking about Punta Cana.
I've not been there. Oh, I have to put it on my list.
Put it there.
All right. Yeah. Most used app on your phone.
Waze. With all the traveling.
I was gonna say
that is right. my number one. I'm a diamond on Waze.
You do put a lot of miles on your car. Favorite hobby outside of ministry?
NASCAR.
We talked about that.
We talked about NASCAR.
So what is about NASCAR? I want people, this is a side of you that a lot of people probably don't know. What is it about NASCAR?
Since I was a kid in Brazil, right? Stock cars in Brazil it's very big. Open wheel, Formula One, Indy is also big. Grew up with Ayrton Senna, Emerson Fittipaldi, and all that on open wheel. But I grew up in stock car and hearing about the stock car in the U.S. with Dale and Richard Petty and I don't know, Dodge and Oldsmobile and I always want to be a part of this, and I had posters of those guys when I was little in my room. So for me, the first time that I stepped in a speedway here in Texas or Indianapolis, it was very emotional for me. So I love about the noise, the smell, the environment. So NASCAR.
So interestingly enough, a fun fact about you was it 2 years ago you were in Daytona?
Yeah. For
president's meetings.
Yes.
And you got a chance to go. Yeah. How many laps around the track? 4 laps around. 4 laps. At what
180.
Speed? 180.
180.
And you got to unveil the car.
I had to unveil the car. Adventist, they sponsor a couple of races where they have a market there and they do such a fantastic job. And so I was sitting there. I organized that. I was the chairman for that retreat. So I was able to organize with Terry Shaw, our president and CEO for Advent Health. And I was just sitting there, just enjoying. There was an interview. The cars were there. We're in the speedway place. And all of a sudden, they call me up front and say, come and unveil the car. And I was able to do it, and it was very special. It was very special.
So what's interesting is I'm a big sports guy, as a lot of people know, but I've started to pick up NASCAR, and it's kind of an interesting. It's an interesting sport like no other sport.
Yeah, and people they think that watching it's so boring watching TV. Go to the track. It's a whole different experience.
Yeah. One thing on your bucket list. Obviously, you've ridden on Daytona, so that's that was one thing off your list. But what's another thing on your bucket list?
Man, I have my bucket so big. I have on just so many things. But I want to go to Asia. Spend more time in Asia. We love to travel as a family, right? So we want to go and spend some time there in Japan, China, in those areas. And so travel is a big part of us. So that's something on our on our bucket list.
Okay. So Asia. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Flying.
It still need ways.
They still need ways, but Superman. Superman was my the character that I watched all the time, and being able to fly from one place to another, that was always intriguing, right? And had a little cape, and so
you didn't jump off any roofs or anything like that to try to break.
When I was a kid, that became a big thing. So remember that Superman was flying from top and down. Now, because of kids jumping out of buildings, they'd start flying from the ground up.
I had noticed that.
Yeah. So flying, and that would become very handy.
That would it's true.
Yeah,
we could get places a whole lot faster. Best piece of advice you've ever received.
My mentor, Gary Brady, right, was my mentor, and when I became ministerial, he said, Elton, always make sure that you're spending time with those that matter the most. And in this position, in this job, it's so very easy for us to be gone all the time. Working here in the office, putting a good 45, 50 hours a week, and then gone on the weekends.
Right.
And then you have your spouse, you have your kids, just, waiting for the rest of your time.
Right.
So I'm not perfect, and I need to keep this in front of me all the time. So because I want to make sure that they are my first church, they are my first priority. And it'd be tragic for me to be in heaven and to see what God has done in Texas and not see my family there. Right. So that was the best piece of advice.
It's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
It helps keep us grounded.
It does. It does.
Because ministry can be so all-encompassing.
Yeah. And it also helps us to know that it's not about me.
Right.
This is God's work. That is not my work. It's God's work.
Right.
So when I do that and I trust that God is in control, then yes, I need to then prioritize my time in such a way that my family is also receive a good portion of it and being taken care of. And so, yeah.
No, that's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
Great piece of advice that as I've worked alongside of you, again, over the last 13 years, you truly live out that piece of advice every chance you get. I love seeing the pictures and hearing the stories about Ale, your wife, and Isabella, your daughter, traveling and doing cool stuff. And just, Isabella's 17. I mean, 17. Gee, wow.
We work hard, but we play hard.
No, I love that. Yeah. I love that.
And we do it as a family. We do it together. And they are my ministry. They are an important part of what we do. And I cannot do what I do without them. So we got to be able that we're healthy, that we're connected, and that they love this work and love the Lord as much as I do.
Well, we're going to end it there. That's a great place to end it. So, Elton, thank you for coming on. Great. It's been a great conversation. Yeah. Thank you for joining us on Leadership 360. We hope that you'll continue to follow us. We're halfway through the season. We're going to go through October. We'll take a little bit of a break. So keep tuning in every month as we drop our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts, but also follow us on our YouTube channel, Texas Adventist. And we hope that you have a good month, and we'll see you next month with another episode of Leadership 360.